Rockabye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the boat breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come the baby, cradle and all. Rockabye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the boat breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come the baby, cradle and all. Rockabye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the boat breaks, the cradle will...
What led up to this?
Thank you. Well, days before my arrest in Karamias, I was working for a tuxedo rental shop in Vancouver, and a clown walked in with a bouquet of balloons and a certificate and announced that Yvonne and I had won a trip to Mexico. Up to this point, things were not going great between Yvonne and I. So I tried to have the guest I was allowed to bring change to another girl I was interested in. Slimy, I know, but as the saying goes, don't hate the player, hate the game. I reached out to the travel agent and tried to change the name on the ticket. She said that she would look into it and would have to get back to me about the name change. What I didn't know, that there was no contest. I was not the winner of a trip to Mexico. Aww. Yvonne had purchased the tickets for us both. Wow, big mistake. From my personal experience, I now know that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Sure as shit rolls downhill, the travel agency called Yvonne and said that I was trying to have the name changed from Yvonne to another guest to accompany me. I met Yvonne later that day, and I had made no mention of the trip that I apparently won. She made no mention of the travel agent calling her and telling her that I tried to change the name on the ticket. At this point, it was safe to say that Yvonne knew that I had an interest in another woman, and I hoped to take her to Mexico. When Yvonne picked me up after work in her car, she was so upset, and I suspected she knew that I tried to change the name on the ticket. But instead, she surprised me when she said, "I'm pregnant." Wow. I was blown away by this news. Funny enough, this was actually the second time I knew that Yvonne was pregnant. The first time was with a man named Joe Goodhead. Yes, that's his name. He was a mutual friend of ours, and she had told me that she aborted the baby. Yvonne could see that the news about the pregnancy to me was not favorable and started to become upset and to cry. I told her, "Just drive me home. I got a lot to think about." With a squeal of her tires, she pulled out of the parking lot and started to drive in a very aggressive manner. The whole time I was gripping the dashboard so hard my knuckles were turning white. She slammed into an oncoming car, caused an accident. Yvonne reached into her glove compartment and hastily grabbed a passport and walked over to meet the lady in order to exchange the driver's information. I found it strangely weird that she used her passport to exchange the info and not her driver's license. When she returned to the car, she casually tossed her passport in the glove box. At that time, we both noticed that her license plate from her front bumper had flew off, and she got back out to retrieve it. I was in the passenger seat and looked in her glove box at the passport. I was shocked to see that it had her photo, but a different name. I thought to myself, who the Christ is Tina Baldwin? With certain clarity, I realized that Yvonne had given the accident victim a false name. Not only that, but she used a Canadian government passport. How and why was she able to obtain a fake passport?
Hush, little baby, don't say a word. And if that winter cloak's too cold, Mama's gonna buy you a pile of gold. And if that gold was stolen too, Mama's gonna go to jail for you. So hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna kill for you the whole damn world.
So what did you do in Vancouver?
I worked at a tuxedo shop in Vancouver, and a young lady named Yvonne Gardner was brought on board. The hiring manager at the time was not interested in skilled staff. He definitely searched for employees that were easy on the eyes. Yvonne fit the bill to a T. She was incredibly attractive, had an incredible body. She was the total package. At the time, a co-worker of mine, Damon, was having a party and invited all the staff. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend because I was booked with my other job as a stripper for a local ladies' night. That Yvonne had hooked up with one of Damon's friends at the party, Joe Goodhead. Apparently, he was still a virgin up until he met Yvonne. Days after the gathering, Yvonne and I were at work, and she was very distraught. She was so upset and distracted that I asked her, what's wrong with you? You seem really off. It was then she told me of her first pregnancy. She told me that she was pregnant and that Damon's friend was the father. I asked her what she had planned to do, and she told me, I've got no fucking idea. With this strange turn of events, I was immediately thankful that my mother worked as a high school counselor and that she specialized in giving advice around unplanned pregnancies. She was in fact herself a mother that had given up a baby for adoption. Even though Mom was on the other side of the country, way in East Ontario, I suggested to Yvonne that she could call and talk with her. The advice would be free, and then she could have a somewhat educated decision on how to proceed. I took Yvonne home with me after work and introduced her to my roommate Joel. I asked Joel, is it okay if Yvonne stays here for a few days? Joel, ever the gentleman, agreed. Yvonne then spent over 2 hours on the phone with my mother seeking advice. Later I asked my mom what Yvonne said or planned to do. As my mother was a professional, she told me that what her and Yvonne talked about was confidential. I understood this. Yvonne decided to get an abortion and asked for some time off work. She was eventually dismissed due to continuous absences. On the day of the abortion, she asked me to drive her to the hospital and to take her care and return with it to pick her up 2 hours later. I picked her up from the procedure and we both returned to Joel's and my apartment. I'd made up the sofa for her, but that evening she asked, "Can you sleep with me? I just need a cuddle." Obviously, I agreed and felt compassion for her situation after aborting a baby. Of course, of the following days and nights, she was still sleeping in my bed.
hate interrupted love affairs, don't you? How much nicer when the outside world doesn't interfere with pleasure.
And our relationship shortly developed.